Hi, it's Thane.
And Delphina.
And Crispy here to tell you that we're going to be at
TCAF!
TCAF! The Toronto Comic Arts Festival is one of our favorite indie comic shows, and it's happening in Toronto on May 11th and 12th.
Just head on up to the second floor and look for me at Delphinity Comics and Illustration.
Me, a Crispy at Studio Cartridge Table.
And Thane as my secret IRL identity as Ali Rumkoltov.
See you there!
I'm going to hit pause.
Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday said tomorrow. So just do it! Make your dreams come true!
Hello, and welcome to Screen Tones, where we talk anything and everything webcomics. Today we're going to be going into some motivational stuff about what keeps webcomics both rewarding and fun enough to keep going, and how you can tap into those feelings to finish what you've started. My name is Megan, my pronouns are she, her, and I do the comic Sorcery Shenanigans.
And I'm Crispy. My pronouns are she, they, and I do the webcomics Ghost Junk Sickness and Lunar Blight.
And I'm Delphina. I use she, her pronouns, and I make the webcomic Somnolus. And I have to talk. Okay. So working on webcomics can take years. And it might have started as like a cool, shiny story idea, but maybe you're finding you're working on your webcomic and it doesn't seem as interesting as it used to. Trying to find fun in a story and taking regular breaks, like we talk about in our hiatus episode, is essential for keeping yourself out of burnout territory. But we all also need to feel on some level rewarded by the process of making webcomics too. And that might not come from the sources you immediately think of. So I don't know, let's take a deeper dive into those two elements. I'm just going to toss out this question. What do you find the most fun and the most rewarding about your comic making process? And is there a difference to you between fun and rewarding when making your comic?
Oh boy. um, so when making comics, I always talk about like needing to like the process and whatnot, and how important that is, especially when it's such a huge project. One of the most important things that I think of when making a story, aka comics specifically, because it is a visual medium, is that you're going to be drawing things that you don't like. A really good example of that is cars and stuff like that. And you're going to be drawing things that aren't necessarily as exciting as drawing your Blorbo, doing some finger gun pose and whatnot. And I think that when you start to challenge yourself and get into making these panels look amazing by that car that you started drawing and got better and better, that's when it starts to become rewarding in my head. Having fun along the way, learning, and rewarding as in coming out the other side a little bit better as a artist in that. So when I'm thinking of fun and rewarding as these separate ideas, fun is definitely something like the act of doing stuff. Like, I have a lot of fun inking my comic. Inking is something that I really enjoy. It's just part of the process that I have, the biggest part of, because it is my big part. And, I really look forward to it. There are going to be parts in the comic that I don't like. Specifically to me, I don't really enjoy lettering. Gonna get better at it obviously as we go along, but that's just something that is not as engaging, but something fun like inking kind of keeps me engaged as I go along. But talking about rewarding at the end of that is that, say I do my inking and I have fun and I do my lettering that I have to do, it feels rewarding to finish a page with all of that combined. And I think that's just the difference when you have those things together or separate, is having fun in the process or fun in the creation in the moment, and the rewarding comes when you kind of turn around and say, oh, okay, what have I done, sort of thing. Another kind of example that I think of when I think of fun and rewarding is like a lot of people have fun getting into shows, movies, and whatever, and drawing some fan art, and it feels very rewarding. Getting a lot of likes when they post this fan art onto social media. Now, that to me is pretty interesting because that can feed into it, but it could also deviate into something that can potentially cause burnout. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later in the episode as far as that's concerned. But when Delphi said that rewarding comes from sources that we might not immediately think of, I like to think maybe we can reflect on what we've learned, like I was saying with my lack of liking towards lettering. But what I've learned around that feeling rewarding as opposed to wanting to get rewards from a like or a subscribe and stuff like that. Things I don't have control over, essentially. So it's interesting, but when you start kind of breaking it down for yourself as a creator, you can start picking some things that might help along with the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like it's not wrong to feel like rewarded by seeing, more followers or more likes
Hmm.
or whatever. But it is what you said, it's out of your control. And so if it can really turn into one of these kind of grass and is greener sort of situations when you start listing out and talking about some of the things in your personal experience making comics that you appreciate, and not everybody has those. I know, like
Yeah.
in the Twitter days, you could get a lot of envy looking at somebody else's highlight reel and saying, "Oh, I wish I had that. I don't have those kinds of followers. I don't get those kinds of numbers." But there's other ways. There's other things about the process that you can find rewarding. I think for me, fun is, what makes the work not feel like so much work. I think most of us were drawing for fun as a hobby before we started creating comics. And on some level, we just like the process of drawing. I know I do. I like sketching things out. I like writing dialogue. I really just like thinking about my characters and their voices and how they're going to bounce off of each other. That's so much fun to me. It's not always fun trying to figure out, okay, how does that actually fit into the narrative that I'm trying to tell? So from like the writing aspect, like writing is hard. Writing is not always fun, but when I get into that sort of communication aspect, when I get the page finished and the story and the art are coming together and I put it out there and people say, "Wow, I really got what you were going for there. Um, I really appreciate that. This is making me feel this way." And I'm like, "Yes, that is the feeling I was looking for. This is so great." That is so rewarding for me. Um, I feel like that's kind of the difference for me is just like a rewarding feeling is just something that you can look back on, which is where like fun is kind of just more in the moment for me.
Hmm. Yeah, that really, really makes sense. I do like that reflecting on what you've kind of done while enjoying the process to the extent that you really, really like. But that does make sense. I really like that. Picking up what you're laying down is one of the biggest highlights of webcomics. With that, how do you feel, Meg, about the most fun and most rewarding about your comic making process, and what's the difference between the two for you?
I think I agree with like a little bit of what both of you are saying at the same time. I think I definitely feel strongly what Crispy was saying about fun is kind of the steps along the way to finishing the page, and maybe not all of them in of themselves are fun. Like, I also don't particularly like lettering. I'll be honest, I like making the word balloons a lot more than I like putting the words in the little balloons. And for me, coloring and adding all the like shadows and highlights and little extra sparkles is the most fun part. But along the way, everything kind of culminates in fun, and then the reward sort of is turning around and looking at the final page and going, oh wow, everything together made this. And then I also agree with Delphina that there is that kind of, I guess, chasm. I don't really want to say chasm, but like that hole that people can kind of accidentally fall into of doing things for fun, and then when you get the recognition or people going, oh my goodness, I just love the thing you drew or the comic you're making or the way you do this thing, and you can kind of accidentally start looking for the reward to be the thing that makes you fun, like all the likes and the compliments and the reactions. And it's not necessarily bad to find those rewarding or fun, but if I think like Crispy was saying, that's something that's out of your control and it's not necessarily the thing that maybe you should make your main goal because it's out of your control. You know, the project, you may not want to continue it in that case because it's not getting a lot of recognition. But if you reframed your mind on the fun and reward you're having, maybe you would have continued the project.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I think, to sort of sum it up, it's very much the process is the fun to me, even if every step along the way isn't individually fun. And
Mm-hmm.
the reward is the end result. And the
Mm-hmm.
added bonus of putting it up online and having people look at it.
Yeah, it's interesting when I think about a reward because it does connect to that motivation to do the project, to have the fun
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. And they do feed into each other with that. So it's kind of hard sometimes to separate the two because they exist so
Mm-hmm.
tightly together when you consider projects.
Mm-hmm.
But when you don't have something rewarding, when you're doing something like a webcomic for fun, this is the hurdle that a lot of webcomicers are having difficulty kind of getting over, especially when it's such a large project. Something I always
Yeah.
say is that webcomics are intimidating that way because there are so many things you have to do and blah, 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 blah. But the reward not existing from doing that can very easily crush that motivation to do something like that. So, understanding where you get this reward from or what the reward is something I think is very important for creatives.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's just it it's good to know your own mind. It's good to know why you're doing what you're doing because there's going to be a point in time where life is a little more difficult, where things are not so smooth, and maybe like you've got a lot of stress in your life from other sources, and you're starting to dislike the process. You're starting to like feel a certain way, or you're looking around at other people and you're not seeing what you're doing, it like the value in what you're doing compared to what they're doing because they're so much better or whatever. And it you just have to kind of be able to do that analysis and be able to say like, okay, here's a list of things that I did, and what did I find fun about them? What did I find rewarding about them? Like, oh my gosh, that was a really fun time. And yeah, it's just it's hard. It can be very hard to kind of look into yourself and figure out how you work. But every person's process is different. I can't like tell you what's going to be fun or what's going to be rewarding for you. So that's kind of the thing. You I think it behooves us all to just kind of stop and talk about this and stop and think about it with other creatives and with yourself.
Yeah, it is interesting point because it like I said it feeds so intensely into it. And it I mean, we had discussed this before we started the episode. It was like this is something I don't actually think of a lot. I at least I don't think I think about it. It's always in the back of my mind. Um Subconsciously, I guess. But putting it on the table, it does make you think, oh, what are the parts of the project that I'm finding fun? What are the things that I actually look forward to during this? And how does it feed into each other with that? Moving with this kind of conversation, though, I actually wanted to ask, Delphi, what is your advice to someone who doesn't feel like their webcomic idea is fun anymore?
Um, Gosh, I mean, I think first of all, you got to take a break. Sometimes, for me at least, it's usually a sign that I am trying to do so many things at once, and I, none of them are going to be fun. Even the things I normally think are going to be fun aren't going to be fun because I am just taking on too much at once. So, what I like to do is I take a pad of paper, I write down every single thing that's on my mind, every piece of the project that I'm like, I have to do this and that and this and that and this. And then I prioritize. Then I say, okay, well, this can wait till later. This can wait till later. And I can take a break from this. So let's just focus on these things and giving myself permission to put things down allows me to enjoy the other things because I'm like, I'm not supposed to be working on this. I have decided that this is going to be a thing I work on next week. And this is the thing that I'm supposed to be working on right now. And now I don't have to feel guilty about not doing 20 things at once. And that's hard because I always want to do 20 things at once. But it's definitely the first step for me. I also think like there's a lot of things in comics creations that like I'm never going to find fun. I don't really like flatting. I don't really like doing that part of the process. And thankfully, that's something that I could hire out. So sometimes part of getting like the fun back, like you can get rid of the parts that aren't fun for you sometimes if you want to work as a team with other people, or you can find somebody who wants to like do that on a freelance basis for you. Like that can also just be like, whoa, that was a load off. Now I don't have to deal with that anymore. You can't do that for everything. You can't do that for every part of the process. But I think it is important to remember, like in the hats episode, we're wearing a lot of hats. And kind of take a look at your stack of hats and wonder like, do I need to be wearing all of these hats? Can I simplify this somehow? I think that's a question that I would ask myself because burnout is real. Burnout is not fun. And if you keep going with stuff just because you have to and you feel like you're churning out things and everything feels like work, that's it's just not going to be sustainable for you, and you will have more periods and longer periods of just not being able to do art at all. And that always sucks. You don't want to find yourself in that place if you can help it.
Go, Meg, go.
Okay. I just wanted to say, yeah, hi. That was me. I've been there a time or two.
Oh,
I will
yeah.
confess it. I think that happened at least once this year. It's not fun. Let me make the mistakes for you so you can learn what not to do. But yeah, definitely when you start feeling like every piece of art, even if it's not comic work, maybe you just take a break from comic work and you're like, I'm just gonna doodle my blorbos for no reason other than that's usually my fun thing. And even if your usual fun side art for yourself isn't fun anymore, that's an even bigger red flag, that you just need to take a break from creating. Let the, brain sort of rest for a little while. And maybe you come back to the project and your comic or your art is fun again. And you just kind of learn what you can and can't handle. And it's a long process. And if you're anything like me, you will mess up a time or two. But you will eventually start to kind of get a handle on how much you can and can't hold, how many, per se, hats you can have on your head for a certain amount of time before you need to schedule a break. And if you do schedule that break, or if you have a burnout and you take a break, a long one, and you come back and the project isn't fun anymore, it's sad. It's always sad when you end a project, but you don't really, finish it with a nice little bow on top. But if it's not fun for you anymore, it's, at least if that's the thing that sort of, ties into your part of your reward, is the fun aspect of your comic, towards whatever reward you have, there's no reason to push yourself to keep creating that comic or that art, because it's not going to truly feel rewarding, because you're not going to be excited about it. You're not going to have some sort of fun, some sort of energy while you're creating the thing. It's going to feel like capital work. And it is work. It's a lot of work. It's so much when you're doing comics. But it shouldn't feel as bad as a 9 to 5 office job. You shouldn't feel like you're your own micromanaging boss.
You know, it's interesting you say that because there's a lot of folks I see that are just making webcomics because they feel like they have to fit in certain crowds and stuff like that. And I don't think that I'm seeing them having fun when there is an imaginary gun pointing to their head as they're making this comic, stressing over every single part of the
Mm-hmm.
creation process. And I'm just like, are you okay, buddy? Like, if you're not enjoying this, you don't gotta do this. Not to be this person, but there's not a lot of money in webcomics. So
I will be the one to say it out loud. I don't make money on my webcomic. There is no money in this for me. But yeah, especially when it's like you see people like that and you literally look at them and you're like, you are the one holding the gun to your head
yeah,
to make this comic.
yeah,
If you have to hold a gun to your head, then why are you doing it?
yeah.
It's not fun.
And like it's definitely layered onion style, like with why this is a thing. I don't think we're gonna get into it this episode, but it is important to still have fun slash enjoy the process, even if it's not all the way, because like I said, we still gotta draw cards. And that's going to reflect well in the work that you make too. Like when I talk about writing with my peers, one of the biggest things is that you have to also like what you're writing too. And if you don't like what you're writing, say you're writing a character that you don't like, the audience is going to tell that you don't like this character and it's going to come off really sucky. It's not going to come off engaging and stuff like that. And the same could be said when you're not having fun with the comic that you create. It does come off with this energy of unfun and comes off as like, this is just, something I am having to do and it's just unenjoyable and whatever. Like the ride is not fun. I'm not enjoying lining up to read this, and this is the case. That said, like Delphi and Meg said, I think it's very important to take a step back and to realize that you can walk away from these projects. There's no one actually holding a gun to your head and saying that you have to finish your webcomic, and there is no shame in stopping something because it's not fun. I think that's like the biggest thing, is that you don't actually have to finish it, because everything that you have created regardless is still working towards the bigger goal. And maybe you don't realize that, but you still got better. No matter how many pages you've done and you need to walk away, you still improved from that regardless. So take that at least with you if you do feel like your webcomic is no longer fun, and kind of, remind yourself that there are things that you have learned along the way. And even if this is not fun anymore, it's okay to step back. I've learned from it. I'm stronger to do the things that I do find fun, that I do find enjoyable and whatnot.
I do want to say too that I don't always think it's like I am either having all kinds of fun or I'm not and I have to quit. I think there's stuff in between that, because there's like a lot of times where maybe the writing isn't fun. I hear people talk about all the time like, "Oh, I have to get through this scene. It's really not fun." Like, "Oh gosh, this scene is going to be such a slog, but I have to do it because it's establishing the blah blah blah." And sometimes I'm reading it, I'm like, "No, you don't. this scene wasn't necessary, and like something in you is actually tapping into the fact that like this isn't fun because it's boring, and the readers are actually going to find it boring too. If you cut that scene, you could get back to like the stuff that is fun, and maybe that's a solution for you. So like kind of look for that middle ground too, because I don't always think that it feels great to just drop a project as soon as you're not feeling the vibes, because you can bring the vibes back. I think that's always a possibility. But if you don't, that's okay too. If you find something else that's going to be more fun and a better use of your time, like go for it.
Yeah, and I think that point about when something's not fun, not immediately quitting being the solution is important, because that's why we're all saying, like, oh, if you do ever feel like something's not fun, take a break. Like maybe you're just burnt out, or maybe you need to take a step back and change something about the project so it is fun, or maybe it's just not fun anymore. Like that's important. um and it's not like, oh no, don't quit your project. Like, oh, all these people like it, why would you quit your project? It's just like reframing your mind before you make such a big decision, making sure that like you're not going to regret giving up on your project later on. I mean, you may still, but you know, you're gonna have thought about it for a while instead of just making like a split second choice. Because I don't think I've spoken about it on the podcast, but I believe some of the cast at least knows that I used to do a journal comic uh, before I started up Sorcery Shenanigans.
Yeah.
I don't mention it because it's not going anymore, but I did it for 5 years, I think. And it is, or was, I guess, since I don't do it anymore, way more popular than Sorcery Shenanigans is, at least by the numbers my brain can see. And I think that's just partially because it's a journal comic. Those are almost always pretty popular. And I was having fun when I was doing it, and everybody else was having fun because it was just like, hey, here's my life. Here's what happened. I thought this was funny. I made it funnier. Here you go. And there was a small voice inside of me that was like, well, why would you quit doing this? It's so popular. So many people comment on it, and there's so many people liking it all the time. And I had to realize that for me, while it was super nice to see all those comments and whatnot, that wasn't my reward. It wasn't fun anymore to create those little journal comics. It started feeling inchingly closer to capital W work. It felt like work and kind of, oh no, I have to make a comic this week. Oh, what am I going to pick? I do sometimes look back and go, what if I had continued? You know, that not necessarily a regret, but you just kind of wonder. But you know, sometimes you have to quit a project. And now I've got all this time for other projects. So now I can do more projects.
All the
More.
projects.
Yeah.
All of them, all the ideas in my head. Never stop.
Journal comics especially, because you have to like keep coming up with new content like based on your life. I feel like that's like high level stress when I think
Yeah.
about it, just trying to adapt something from that actually happened to me into an amusing
Mhm.
anecdote. Like I only got so much material, I've only lived so long.
Yeah.
I think part of my problem was, and this is gonna sound so sad, but I'm gonna put it out here on air. When I was in college, life was so much funnier, and I don't know, like there was so much more going on because it was college and you had classes and you hung out with all these people. Not to say I was a social butterfly. I hung out with all my fellow animation nerds, so it's just a bunch of nerds all together. But I had so much going on, and then anytime I was at home for a long period of time, it was like, well, I guess this thing the other day was kind of funny, or I'll make a comic this week about my cat because I love my cat. And so I think that was also part of the reason why I quit, is because I was like, I'm at home now because I graduated and I don't have a lot of interesting stuff to put out here.
Well,
It's like,
it is
that's so
interesting though,
boring.
because like you're talking about it feeding that kind of project with like, it being a little bit more happening during college and whatnot. And
Mm-hmm.
that's completely understandable. And when you hit that like, fork in the road, I'll call it. It's not necessarily a wall, but it is a fork because you're right. Like,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you have stuff like that that has taken off a little bit more than your other stuff. When you have these like bite-sized kind of comics that reflect on moments, it is very easy to relate to an audience when you have
Yeah.
that. There is a rise in these types of comics,
Mm-hmm.
and it does become work at one point, and the fun starts to kind of stop when you're trying to think of something new all the time, and that in itself is that's a feat to
Yeah.
constantly do that.
I look back at it and I'm like, man, I used to do that and just look at my life and go, what should I pick today? From the seat of my pants. And now I have a script and I go, okay, here's an outline of what should happen next. There's some cool details you should definitely put in there, but the rest is up to you. Instead of going, yeah, so whatever you want on the next page, you come up
Yeah.
with it. Have fun. And I'm like, I could never do anything by the seat of my pants again. I need structure, please.
But it's an interesting lesson to kind of learn when making comics. It makes me think of our next kind of question in this is that what is your advice to someone who isn't seeing any kind of rewards from their webcomic? Delphi, I'm going to go after you.
Okay. Well, again, like, I know I feel a certain kind of way when someone's like, isn't it nice when your readers compose poetry and iambic pentameter about your characters? It really makes it gratifying. And I'm like, that has
What?
never happened to me. It sure does sound nice.
Who?
And now
Who's
I feel
getting that?
inadequate. And I feel kind of sorry for myself because I don't have that. But I came up with kind of a list because, and I encourage you to listen. I encourage you to set your comparisons aside and really sincerely celebrate your own wins and other artists' wins and understand that
Yes.
it's not a contest because it's
Mm-hmm.
really not about having all the other things another artist has. It's not about looking at somebody else and saying, I want that for me. It's about looking at the things you already have that you're thankful to have that wouldn't have been there if you hadn't done as much as you've done. That's what rewarding means to me. So, I mean, like, do you feel rewarded by the communication aspect? Are there people who are like really, really into what you're communicating, the messages of your comic, and and they're like talking to you in your in comments? Is that rewarding for you? Do you feel rewarded by looking back at your old artwork and seeing how far you've come and how much you've grown? Do you feel rewarded when you commission somebody or do a trade with another artist to make art of your characters and you kind of get that connection with another artist and also get to see your characters in a new,
Mm-hmm.
fresh light? Do you feel rewarded when you finish all the thumbnails for the chapter, you finish all the inks, you finish all the flatting, and you get like your batch to completion? Like maybe that's rewarding for you. Do you feel rewarded when you feel like you've achieved some degree of mastery over the medium where you could just like knock out a page or a piece and it comes out exactly how you wanted it to? Um, do you feel this one's a big one for me. Do you feel rewarded when you engage with other comic artists in a community? Or
Mm-hmm.
you do a group anthology or an art trade together and you see everybody's stuff come
Mm-hmm.
together? Do you feel rewarded when you go to a convention, you have your comic at a convention, you see real life people reacting to your comic? Do you feel rewarded when you look at your traffic on Google Analytics and see evidence that more people are reading your work? Do you feel rewarded that you're making something true to yourself when you feel like you really expressed something that you really wanted to read that you've never had, and you read it again and you're just so happy that you made it? Made it the way you wanted to make it and nobody could stop you. You get the little evil villain laugh. um There's financial rewards, of course, like you might have gotten donations or ad revenue or Patreon pizza money, but like maybe you've tried something new and it's exciting to see yourself make a thing that you've never made before. Do you feel rewarded like you've put some good in the world that could help people? Maybe you made a thing that would cheer people up and make them laugh or get them thinking and inspired, or maybe they're in a tough situation, your work could help them process or validate or give some catharsis to some darker feelings. um and some of these are immediate, some of these take time, some of them give you a large feeling of satisfaction, some will give you a small feeling of satisfaction, and some you might feel completely neutral about them. They don't apply, you don't make money, or like maybe like I know the money thing, it actually makes some people nervous because it's tying your creativity to a paycheck, and like Meg said, now it's capital W work, and that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of a negative feeling. um so yeah, we're all different people. We're all creating for different reasons, but it's a practice of mindfulness to pick up on these things, to kind of go down the list and keep an eye on when you feel what you feel, and and make it about more than one thing. Make your rewards about multiple things, because then you can put yourself in more situations that will make those rewards more likely to happen. And it's okay to have some externally motivated rewards where it does rely on other people to make them happen, but uh, there should be a balance between that and internal rewards for sure, because you can't always control other people. That's kind of the one thing that you have to kind of keep in mind through all of this. Like, you can feel rewarded by things that other people have done or the connections that you have made, but you're not always going to have that. So there really should be multiple layers to this.
Well said. Holy shit.
I had a
I
list.
know. You were prepared. Excuse me, this is just Delphina's TED Talk. We'll all take a seat now.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Thank you for inviting me. I feel like, why did you invite me?
No,
You did it
no.
wonderfully. No, I'm kidding.
No, it's just really good points all across the board, Delphina.
Oh, yeah.
I can't even elaborate because it's just so well said with everything.
I can.
put out. But yeah, Meg, go right ahead.
I'll do it for you, Chris. I'll pick up the baton. I definitely think your point about having both those internal rewards and those external rewards is super important. And I think the exact way to sum up what I've been trying to say, you should, wanting recognition or just like a neat comment of, oh my gosh, I really loved this page. It's not a bad thing. But it's not something you can control. And so having that and something you can control, I think, is a good balance. Because if maybe you don't get as many comments one day, you're still having fun because the process of seeing all your thumbnails done all at once is the other thing that feels rewarding to you. And you're in control of that. And as long as you finish all your thumbnails, you're having fun and it's rewarding. And I think for me, a couple of the ones you mentioned that hit is like when you do the whole batch and you look at the whole batch of pages you've done. And for me, that's 4. And I go, look at that. I finished 4 pages and it all looks great. That's part of the internal reward for me. And there's just something about that seeing 4 pages all done, ready to go up. That feels good.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think before that, I don't get any comments on my comic, but I don't care anymore because I know there are people who read it, and y'all may not leave comics, but you're still reading it, and you're probably I hope you're still having fun with me. So me going along blissfully thinking that you're still having fun is part of my reward also. I mean, I know there's one person who told me at TCAF, you know who you are, I will not mention you, told me they were enjoying it. And I was like, oh my gosh, nobody has ever to my face told me. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, pals, that this doesn't include you. You are friends. I know you love my comic. You don't have to say it to me out loud.
Mhm.
It's not required, but I feel it. I feel the
Yeah.
vibes. But to have a person you don't know very well come up and go, I like it. I can see you're having fun and I'm also having fun. You just go, oh my goodness. And every time I put up a page, I do think about all the friends who read it and I'm like, look at them, they're all having fun. And then I think about that one person and I go, they're also having fun. Look at us all just having fun. And I upload my silly pictures on the internet.
That's what gets me addicted to conventions too, just like because of that IRL connection. Like a million people online can tell me, oh yeah, I read your comic, it's nice, or blah 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 blah. But like actually seeing like a person like to face say like you make a good comic, it's just thank you. Oh my god.
I feel that. I mean, I haven't been to a convention yet and I don't have any comics, but like I feel that. There's something about online you're like, "Oh wow, amazing." And then for some reason somebody could tell me the same exact thing that they wrote online in person and I'd go, "What? You think it's great? You love it? This is the first time I'm hearing it. Oh my gosh."
Having that like connection definitely makes a difference there for sure.
It's a dopamine hit. Man.
Oh gosh, as much as I like to think about this topic, I always think about the rewards, the fun, the enjoyment of the process and whatnot. As far as my advice to someone who isn't seeing any kind of rewards in this whole moment creating the webcomic, reflect on the purpose of the project and think about Delphi's very beautiful list where you get rewards from, what truly are these rewards, and understand that they have to feed into that fun to an extent for the project to kind of continue and to prevent burnout, because not having a reward in something does actually feed into feeling a little bit worthless or having lack of purpose with something when you're not getting that reward from a project. So it is important to reflect with what you want from it and what you are going to get, what you hope to get, and what you are going to get, or what you're getting, sorry, with this project, because those factors really are kind of a testament to how long you're going to be creating something like this. I've seen a lot of webcomic creators want that rush, and they look over to their peers' shoulders and look at how many subscribers or whatever they have, and they're like, well, I want that. That's what I want. And that's hard. That's hard on you. That's hard on your friends who have those numbers and whatnot. And, that's just not going to be fun for you, if that's the only thing that we're kind of looking for. You can have that as a reward, 100% you can, and you can feel good about that. Yes, definitely celebrate, but try to get things that are a little bit more in your control. As far as rewards can go, feel accomplished when you did actually finish a page, because that is a really, really big thing. But just understand your limitations and, the purpose of your project. That's a big one.
Yeah, I feel like I started out comics with a lot of unrealistic goals because I was looking at people who were like had been doing this for years, were very established, and I was just like, okay, I'm gonna get 100 followers a day, and I'm gonna get sell my original pages on eBay, and blah 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 blah, and it's just like, um, I think one important thing for me starting out was just to keep on checking in with myself, keep on like saying, okay, well, I didn't get this, but I got this, this, and that. And
Hmm.
so that's going to set the bar actually, instead of like looking to somebody else and seeing like that, because otherwise you're just setting yourself up to fail, right? You're setting yourself up to, maybe you're not that skill level, maybe you're not that established with a community that's going to support you financially or whatever. So that kind of goal doesn't really make sense for you at this point. it can be something you try to work towards. It can be something you kind of experiment with. And I personally find a lot of fun in experimentation of like saying, okay, I want to try this. I want to try this little gimmick. I want to try this social media post. We'll see how people respond to it. I'm very curious to see if people like it or not. And then, I kind of take my data and I kind of say, well, that was that was it fun and was it rewarding, basically? Was it fun for me to do? And could I sustainably continue to do it if I wanted to make it a Patreon reward or whatever?
Mhm.
But also, did I see any kind of results? Were people kind of vibing with it or something? Sometimes it kind of takes a couple tries, and you want to. I feel like I started one thing where I was like doing voicemails from one of my characters, like little voice clips in my Patreon for like a month, and nobody really listened to them. I can see the stats. Nobody really listened to them, and they were hard
No.
to do. And I was just like,
Aw.
oh, okay, I guess I won't continue to do that. But it was fun to have tried it. It
Mhm.
was it was
Mm.
interesting to like just kind of get outside my normal scope of things and shake it up and try a little something new. So I think that's another thing too, just like you never know, right? And
Yeah.
I feel one of the things that I've started to do in like the last couple of years is at the end of the year I do a little yearbook of Zombulus, and I gathered together the number of pages I did that year and the number of Kickstarters I did or pictures of the books that I printed. I put together all the fan art that people have given me that year. I put together, this was my favorite page. These were my favorite panels. These were my favorite facial expressions. And I just put it all together into one PDF for myself, and for other people to look at too. And it's been a very nice way to celebrate what I have done and how much I've done, because a lot of that, some of it was like numbers and stuff, but some of it was just like that is literally all that I've done. That's
Mhm.
all of the things that I made happen, and nobody could stop me from doing them. And here's my favorite comments and stuff, and some of them are external. Obviously you have to have comments to like make a little comment page, but if it wasn't part of what I got that year, it wasn't gonna make it in the PDF. But it's just still nice to like just go through all that and reflect, because a lot of times you forget. A lot of
Yes.
times you get stuck in the grind and you're working and you're working and you're working, and you don't really think about like how many things people have done for you or how many things that you've drawn in the past that really made you happy. And just pulling that back and taking that time can really rejuvenate you, in my experience.
That was beautifully said, Delphi. My
Mm-hmm.
Thank
god.
you.
A very good bow, so to speak.
Absolutely wonderfully said, Delphi. I definitely could not have said it better than what you have said. Holy. The last thing that, we got to kind of think about is just, again, like Delphi said, reflect on what rewarding means to you. Like we've all been saying, what does fun to you? And just really think about this stuff when you're creating webcomics. And with that, I think that's a chicken salad Caesar wrap. I'm Crispy. You can find my works at ghostjunkcygnus.com and lunarblight.com.
And I've been Delphina. You can find my webcomic Zombulus at zombulus.com.
And I've been Megan, and you can find my comic Sorcery Shenanigans at sorceryshenanigans.com.
How rewarding.
I feel rewarded by making this podcast with
I feel
everybody.
Aww,
I
that's
feel so
so
dang
cute.
good every time we do one.
It's
Yeah,
fun
this
too.
feels good.
I'm like, I gotta
know
do
what?
stuff now. I got energy.
This
I
is
felt like I needed
fun.
to take a nap before we did this, and now I'm like, I'm.
Thank you for listening to Screen Tones, a webcomic podcast. We are supported in part by the fantastic folks at Hiveworks, home of many amazing independent webcomics. Check out their store at hivemill.com to find ebooks and print books of many fine Hiveworks titles. We're also supported by, well, listeners like you over on Ko-fi. Drop us a few bucks if you enjoy what we do and want to help us continue talking about anything and everything webcomics. And don't forget to give us a follow on Blue Sky and Tumblr so you don't miss an episode. You can find links to all of those at screentonescast.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.